Hey everyone, Roy Osherove here, part number 3 of books that I have here that I would actually recommend. First book, nothing to do with programming, it's actually about marketing. It's called Purple Cow. The cool thing about this book is that it really talks about the new wave of marketing and the whole idea of understanding consumers, what they want, what they don't want, and so on. Very interesting read if you work in a startup and don't understand why things aren't working out for you. It was given to me by Eli Lupian, the CEO of Typemart. Very, very interesting. Second book, Anti-Patterns. The cool thing about this book is, unlike design patterns, this is about bad patterns in code. The whole idea is about projects in crisis and why projects come to crisis. For example, big ball of mud and stuff like that, where you have patterns in code that you can actually recognize that are problematic. So it's a good book to read after you've read design patterns books, because it has nothing to do with design patterns. So it's just like a little. I made a little joke there. Code Complete, second edition. This is a very good book. If you have the book Clean Code by Robert Martin, there's a lot that is similar, but Robert Martin talks about other things as well. This book is very basic in terms of the assumptions about the developer. This book is pretty old, but it contains a lot of very good stuff, making readable short code and stuff like that, what to avoid in terms of readability, and so on, and maintainability as well. So it's a very, very good book. If you have new developers in your team, I highly suggest they read this. If you have experienced developers in your team, I highly suggest they take a look and see what it is they're missing. As a practice, I would actually ask a developer on my team to find at least 3 things they didn't know or didn't think about doing in their code after reading this book. Code Leader. This book is relatively new. What I like about it is it will give team leaders some good practices of what you should do in your team in terms of processes, unit testing, automated builds, and all that stuff. It does talk about Agile, but it doesn't say, it doesn't take it as a religion. What I like about it is very practical. It doesn't talk about leadership, which I was missing in this book. It's relatively short, but it does talk about a lot of great practices. I would recommend to have this if you're a new team lead and you're not sure about good ways to handle your team's process. How do you deliver software, stuff like that. So this is one way to see how other teams perform software delivery in real life, up to the bits and bytes. What software can you use? How do you configure stuff? How does everything fit together from 0 to 60 in terms of software? This is a very old book, Applied Microsoft.NET Framework. This is the first one I ever read about .NET. I just want to say kudos. One of those books at Microsoft Press, which I actually really liked. My Jeffrey Richter. Andy Richter is another personality. I liked it because it's very thorough. I'm not sure, but there should be a version for the latest version of .NET. If there isn't, that's too bad. Agile Software Development, the Cooperative Game. This is a meta book. It's to understand, this book exists to understand why Agile works and why a lot of other methodologies work as well, and what parts of methodology can you take and how can you build your own methodology. So it's about taking a process. It's basically about how to create a process that creates processes. It's very interesting because it looks at software development like a game, and in a game there's not necessarily winners or losers, but there's an objective, and sometimes the objective is just to continue the game as long as possible. It's a very interesting read after you feel that you've basically understood processes and methodologies. this takes you one level higher. It's right up there with Lean Principles and those books, but it was written just before the other Lean books. This is one of the books that got me started in test-driven and .NET. Before that, I had the Kent Beck book, which I suggested in the previous video. But this is a book by James Newkirk and Alexei Vorontsov. The two guys who actually imported NUnit into .NET, if I'm not mistaken. It has a lot of great ideas, and one of the ideas that I got from here is, one of the ideas that they say here is that they couldn't really solve the idea of database testing and how to roll back the database state for integration testing. But it did give me some ideas, and I was able to build on the ideas here to get the transactional database rollback happening in .NET. So it's a very cool book, very interesting. You can just read this if you want to understand TDD, and you can also read this after you've read Kent Beck's book. Agile Project Management with Scrum. This is a very good book to understand Scrum, the basics. You won't be a Scrum Master, you won't be a Scrum methodologist after this. What you would be is someone who understands Scrum a little bit better. So if you understand Scrum, this is a good book. GUI bloopers. Forgot to talk about this book in earlier videos. This book also very good anecdotes, do's and don'ts in UI. Very, very interesting. Not just web, also a lot of WinForm related UI as well. Very cool. The .NET Framework Standard Library Annotated Reference. What I liked about this book, I got it a while ago, is that it talks about why things were designed the way they were in the .NET Framework, and about some of the mistakes that they made. So if you design frameworks for a living, if you design infrastructure as well, this is a good book to have, because there's also do's and don'ts here. There's stuff to learn, and there's stuff to learn that you should not do. But it's a very good way to get into the mind of people who designed a very complicated, very big framework. Very, very interesting for designers and architects and API designers. That's it for this week's edition. I think I have one more part about languages and technical books that I have, but so far I think we've covered maybe, I don't know, 30% of the library here. There's a lot of non-technical books. Maybe I'll do a review of those as well. Cheers, have fun, and to you guys at OrDev, I highly envy you guys. Cheers.